The first splash didn't make a sound. It hit him. Yes, spread across his black suit like a blooming wound, but the ballroom was too loud, too bright, too proud for anyone to hear the impact. It was the laughter they heard instead. High, sharp, glittering. The kind of laughter people use when they believe the world belongs to them. Marcus Hale stood still beneath a chandelier dripping gold light, the red wine sliding down his collar in thin, violent lines. Around him, crystal glasses clinked, sequins shimmered, and 100 privileged eyes turned his humiliation into entertainment. A woman in a red gown, icy smile, perfect posture pointed at him as if he were a spectacle placed there purely for her amusement. God, she laughed. What an absolute idiot. Her friend beside her lifted her phone, angling the camera for a better shot. A cluster of tuxedoed guests leaned in, smirking, waiting for the moment he would break. Waiting for him to flinch, apologize, shrink. He didn't. Marcus simply raised his phone to his ear. No rush, no panic, no emotion. Just a quiet inhale, steady, anchored while the room buzzed with cruelty. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. The woman in red stepped closer, swirling her empty glass as if debating whether to throw another. "Who even let you in here?" she asked, voice dripping disdain. "This is a private executive event, not—" Her eyes traveled from his simple tie to his soaked shirt. "Whatever this is." Laughter again. A chorus now. Behind her, a young man in a cream tux whispered loudly enough for the circle to hear, "He's probably a caterer pretending to be a guest." More laughter, phones lifted higher. Marcus's jaw didn't tighten, but the air around him did, as if the room itself sensed a shift it wasn't prepared for. A security guard, alerted by the commotion, stepped forward. "Sir, you're disrupting the event. I'm going to have to escort you out." The woman in red folded her arms triumphantly. "Please do. People like this ruin the atmosphere." Marcus finally spoke quiet, measured, each syllable sharp as polished steel. "Don't touch me." The guard hesitated. Something about the way Marcus said it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. A second guard arrived. A waiter froze mid-step. Someone near the champagne tower whispered, "Is he serious?" No one knew him. No one cared to. That made the arrogance easier. But the phone at Marcus's ear clicked, and a calm voice answered on the other end. He didn't look at the mockers. He didn't wipe the wine from his suit. He didn't move an inch. He simply said, "Stay on the line." His justifications. The ballroom didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything began to break. For a moment, no one moved. Marcus stood beneath the chandelier, wine dripping from his sleeve onto the marble like a slow, deliberate countdown. The ballroom's laughter didn't fade all at once. It cracked, stumbled, then thinned into a confused hum. The woman in red recovered first. "Oh, come on," she scoffed, rolling her eyes as if she were the victim. "You're actually calling someone? What are you going to do, complain?" Her friends laughed again, but softer now, like they weren't entirely sure they should. The woman in white lifted her phone to record another angle. "No, wait. Hold up. This is good," she giggled. "Security's already here. He's done." Two guards approached, steps heavy, unsure. Marcus didn't look at them. He didn't look at anyone. He simply held the phone to his ear, listening, the faintest shift in his posture tightening the air. "Sir, we need you to step outside," the first guard repeated, voice louder than necessary, as if volume could compensate for how uneasy he suddenly felt. The man in the cream tux chimed in smugly. "Yeah, do everyone a favor." He flicked invisible dust from his sleeve. "You don't belong at an event like this." One. The words landed the way they always land, soft to the speaker, heavy to the target. Marcus didn't blink. From the far side of the room, a waiter froze mid-pour. His eyes widened the moment he recognized the man standing in the center. His lips parted almost a warning, but the floor manager shot him a glare that killed the impulse. "Don't," the manager hissed. "We handle this." But the waiter's gaze didn't leave Marcus. He'd seen this story before. He knew exactly who was being humiliated. The woman in red lifted her glass again, swirling what little wine remained. You know, she said sweetly, if you want attention, you could have just asked. No need to embarrass yourself. Her friends burst into nervous laughter, not confident laughter anymore, but the kind people use to fill space when something feels off. Marcus finally lowered the phone. Not to hang up, to speak. His eyes lifted calm, unreadable, carrying weight they didn't yet understand. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. The room went still again, as if the chandelier itself held its breath. The guard stepped forward. Sir, this is your final. But Marcus cut him off with a single line, delivered soft enough to be civil, sharp enough to leave a mark. I wasn't talking to you. And just like that, the balance in the ballroom shifted barely, subtly but unmistakably. The storm hadn't arrived. It had only changed direction. The guards hesitated, exchanging a glance that betrayed more doubt than authority. The woman in red noticed it, and annoyance twisted across her face. Oh my God, are you serious? She snapped. He's soaked the floor, ruined the mood, and you're just standing there? Her heels clicked sharply as she stepped closer to Marcus, invading his space with entitled confidence. Look at me when I'm speaking to you, she demanded. Marcus didn't move. The lack of reaction only irritated her further. Behind her, the woman in white kept filming, whispering to the camera. He's pretending to be somebody. Watch, security's gonna drag him out any second. Her friend nudged her, adding with a half-drunken smirk, maybe he snuck in using the service elevator. Laughter again. Not loud, but poisonous. Across the ballroom, more guests began to notice the tension. Conversations thinned into whispers. Some watched with idle curiosity, others with subtle discomfort. No one intervened. Not yet. The man in the cream tux stepped forward, emboldened by the crowd. You heard her, he said to Marcus. Stand up straight. Apologize for interrupting the event, then leave quietly. It's not that complicated. He said it the way one speaks to a child. A muscle shifted in Marcus's jaw, small, precise, controlled, but he still didn't look at them. The second guard finally mustered confidence. Sir, step outside, now. Deviled. He reached out, fingers brushing Marcus's wrist, not rough, but authoritative enough to mark the moment the line was crossed. Before the guard could tighten his grip, a voice cut in from the side. Don't touch him. It wasn't loud, but it carried. All heads snapped toward the waiter, young, nervous, apron slightly wrinkled, but eyes unwavering. He stood frozen halfway between tables, tray trembling in his hands. The floor manager stormed toward him. What do you think you're doing? The waiter swallowed hard. You can't manhandle guests. Not like this. Guests? The woman in red let out a cold laugh. He is not a guest. Look at him. The waiter's voice cracked, but he didn't back down. That's exactly why you're wrong. A small ripple passed through the room. Uncertainty, curiosity, the sense that something was being revealed, but not yet understood. Marcus finally turned his head just slightly toward the waiter. A silent acknowledgement. A quiet thank you. But before anyone could process the shift, the man in the cream tux barked out, Security! Remove both of them. And that was when Marcus's phone lit up. A soft vibration. A signal. He lifted it back to his ear. I'm ready, he said calmly. And the ballroom, so smug, so certain a moment ago, grew suddenly, unmistakably tense. The vibration from Marcus's phone seemed to echo through the ballroom, even though no one else could hear it. Something in his posture shifted, still calm, still quiet, but now deliberate, controlled. The kind of calm that unnerves people who rely on chaos to stay in charge. The woman in red scoffed, masking her discomfort. Oh, please, she said, waving a dismissive hand. You're not calling anyone important. Stop pretending. But her voice didn't land the way it had before. The room wasn't laughing with her anymore. The foundation of her confidence had begun to crack. The floor manager grabbed the waiter's arm. You're done, he hissed. You're out of this job. No, the waiter said, pulling back. His voice shook, but the courage behind it was undeniable. You're not firing me for telling the truth. The woman in white lowered her phone, confusion flickering through her features. What truth? She asked. He literally crashed the... He didn't crash anything, the waiter said, louder this time. He was on the list. I saw it earlier. The crowd reacted with a subtle ripple, heads turning, eyebrows lifting, whispers starting. The man in the cream tux barked out a laugh. "Oh, give me a break. You expect us to believe you saw something the event hosts didn't?" But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his tone. The waiter continued, voice steadier now. He checked in. His name was approved. "He belongs here more than any of you think." The woman in red smile faltered. Her fingers tightened around her glass. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, turning to the guards. "Remove him already. Why is this taking so long?" The guard who'd touched Marcus earlier hesitated again, eyes flicking down to the phone. Marcus held, as if instinct told him something was wrong. Something big. Something above his pay grade. Then Marcus finally lifted his gaze. Not at the woman. Not at the guards. At the entire room. His voice came low, even, almost gentle yet impossible to ignore. "You're operating on assumptions," he said. "Dangerous ones." The ballroom froze. The manager stepped forward, angry and pale. "You don't get to lecture anyone here. This is a private circle. Elite executives. People who actually matter." A thin silence followed. Sharp, stretched tight like wire. Marcus's thumb brushed the edge of his phone. A quiet signal. From the other end of the ballroom, a staff member in a dark suit, someone no one had noticed until now, pressed a finger to his earpiece and began walking briskly toward them. The guards stiffened. The crowd murmured. The woman in red's face drained of color. And the waiter? He stepped back, eyes wide, realizing what was coming. The first tremor of recognition rippled through the room, not understanding yet, but sensing the storm forming in front of them, and Marcus, still drenched in wine, still silent as stone, simply breathed out. "It's time." The man in the dark suit crossed the ballroom with purpose, and his presence alone shifted the air. Conversations died mid-sentence. The chandelier's glow seemed to sharpen. Even the music's soft jazz floating through the speakers felt like it dimmed out of respect for what was coming. But before he reached them, the woman in red made a fatal choice. She stepped directly into Marcus's path, chin raised, voice brittle with panic disguised as arrogance. "No, no one is swooping in to save you," she said. "You're leaving. Now." She grabbed his wrist. It wasn't violent. It didn't need to be. It was enough. Enough to cross the line so clearly the room felt it. The guard inhaled sharply. The waiter flinched. The man in the dark suit stopped walking. Marcus didn't pull away. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at her hand on his skin, wine-stained, shaking, desperate, and the room felt a coldness far sharper than anger. Because violence wasn't what triggered his memory. It was the tone. That same tone. Years earlier. A hotel lobby in Atlanta. He was 22, wearing his only good blazer, portfolio tucked under his arm, interviewing for an entry-level position he'd spent months preparing for. A manager had looked him up and down slowly, dismissively, and said, "You don't belong here. Don't make this difficult." The humiliation carved itself into him. Not the rejection. The assumption. The assumption that he was less. That he should shrink. Disappear. And now the same tone echoed in this ballroom decades later, layered with sequins, champagne, and false glamour, as if nothing had changed. The woman's grip tightened. "Don't stare at me like that," she whispered, fear threading through the anger. "I said, leave." Marcus lifted his eyes to hers, calm, unshaken. "You shouldn't have touched me." The room held its breath. The man in the dark suit reached them at last. He leaned toward the guards, whispering a name, just one name, and whatever he said drained the blood from their faces. The first guard straightened. The second stepped back entirely. The manager sputtered, What's going on?" The man in the suit didn't answer him. He looked only at Marcus and inclined his head with a respect that silenced the entire room. "Sir," he said quietly, "we're ready for your instruction. Buddy, this video's his texer." And in that instant, everyone who had mocked him felt the ground shift beneath their feet, not because they understood, but because the power they thought they owned had just walked across the room and bowed. The ballroom did not breathe. Not when the man in the dark suit bowed his head. Not when the guards stepped back in silent retreat. It was the moment when arrogance finally met consequence, though no one yet understood the scale of it. The woman in red released Marcus's wrist as if she'd touched electricity. I don't understand, she stammered, glancing wildly between the guards, the waiter, and the man in the suit. Why are you listening to him? No one answered her. The waiter, still wide-eyed, looked from Marcus to the suited man, piecing together clues no one else had noticed. The floor manager snapped at him, voice cracking. Don't even think about getting involved. This is above your... But the sentence died when the man in the suit turned toward him, cool and measured. Sir, he said to Marcus, without acknowledging anyone else. Protocol authorization is prepared. Say the word. The room froze around the unfamiliar phrase. Protocol. A word that did not belong in a cocktail party. A word that carried infrastructure, hierarchy, and power behind it. The man in the cream tux tried to reclaim control. He stepped forward, puffed up with fading bravado. Are you kidding me? What protocol? This guy ruined the event. Marcus turned his head, just enough for their eyes to meet. A small thing. Barely a movement. But it shut the man up more effectively than shouting ever could. The disruption, Marcus said quietly, did not start with me. The words sliced through the room cleanly, exposing truth like a surgeon's blade. No one dared respond. On the phone, a voice spoke through Marcus's earpiece, steady, precise, awaiting confirmation. We're ready to initiate Phase 2. Standing by. The woman in red stiffened. Phase? What is happening? Why is he talking like he runs the place? The man in the suit raised a hand calmly, respectfully. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to step back. Step back? Who do you think you're talking to? She demanded. He didn't flinch. I'm speaking to someone who is about to face consequences. Her face fell. The confidence evaporated. A tremor ran from her fingers to her glass. Marcus lifted the phone closer to his mouth. Proceed, he said. One word. Soft, steady. But it carried through the ballroom like a detonator. Lights near the event's check-in station flickered as the system updated. Staff devices buzzed in unison. The floor manager's tablet emitted a shrill alert as lines of text began disappearing. Access revoked. Permissions reset. The waiter gasped softly. He understood. Others only felt fear. And for the first time, the ballroom realized this man wasn't reacting to the room. He was controlling it. It happened subtly at first, a ripple moving through the ballroom like wind brushing over tall grass, but with no source anyone could name. Phones buzzed. Staff badges flickered red. The event's registration tablet shut itself off with a sharp electronic click that made several guests jump. The woman in red spun around. Why is everything glitching? What did you do? Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. The man in the dark suit spoke quietly into his earpiece. Phase 2 confirmed. Stand by for cross-check. His voice held the crisp cadence of someone who reported only to the top. Very top. The guards straightened, posture shifting from authority to obedience. Not to the ballroom. To him. The man in the cream tux swallowed, stepping backward. Hold on. None of this makes sense. Why are you all acting like he's, I don't know, important? The waiter exhaled shakily, relief mixing with awe. I tried to tell you, he said softly. He wasn't lying. He didn't sneak in. He's here on purpose. His eyes moved to Marcus, more certain now, more respectful. But the woman in red clung to her denial like a lifeline. No, absolutely not. He's nobody. Do you hear me? Her voice trembled, brittle as cracked glass. He's nobody. The man in the suit turned to her, expression unreadable. Ma'am, he said calmly, with respect, that is the last incorrect assumption you will make tonight. Her mouth fell open. No, I want answers. If he's so important, then tell us who he is. Marcus finally lifted his gaze again slowly, deliberately like someone choosing the exact moment to shift the earth beneath their feet. You don't want that answer right now, he said. His tone wasn't threatening. It was factual, cold truth, delivered gently. One of the guards stepped in front of the woman in red, not to protect Marcus, but to shield her from what she was about to provoke. The floor manager, voice thin as paper, stuttered, Sir, is there something you'd like us to do? Marcus didn't even look at him. Instead, he spoke into the phone still at his ear. Confirm system override. The ballroom lights dimmed for a second, just long enough to make everyone feel the shift in power. A guest whispered, Who has the authority to do that? Another murmured, This feels like a takeover. Does the woman in white, phone still recording but hands shaking, whispered, Oh my God, we messed with the wrong person. And Marcus Wine, still staining his suit, face calm as carved stone, simply said, It's time for accountability. Not shouted, not dramatic. Just the quiet truth. And that quiet truth terrified them more than anything else could. The ballroom, once loud, glittering, arrogant, had fallen into a silence thick enough to bend the air. No laughter. No clinking glasses. No whispers disguised as confidence. Only tension. The event's lighting recalibrated with a soft, mechanical hum, and more staff badges flashed red, locking out permissions one by one. The floor manager's tablet vibrated violently in his hands before shutting off completely. What is happening? He whispered, staring at the blank screen as if it had betrayed him. The man in the dark suit didn't answer. He was watching Marcus. Everyone was. The woman in red who just minutes ago had drenched him in wine backed up until her shoulders hit a table, rattling the crystalware. Someone say something, she demanded, her voice rising in pitch. This is a mistake. It has to be. He can't do this. But no one rushed to defend her now. No one touched her arm or joined her side. Her power had evaporated the moment she realized she never actually had any. The man in the cream tux swallowed hard and tried to salvage the hierarchy collapsing around him. Hey, listen. Maybe we overreacted. Maybe we should just talk this out. Marcus didn't acknowledge him. He lifted the phone again. Calm. Deliberate. Status? He said. A clear voice answered through the earpiece. All event systems rerouted. Internal logs captured. Surveillance archived. We are standing by. The woman in white lowered her phone, hands trembling. He has a team, she whispered. A full team. The guards stepped closer, not to remove Marcus, but to form a quiet perimeter around him, the way security circles someone who outranks them all. The waiter, still standing nearby, exhaled a shaky breath. He had known something was wrong. He had not expected the entire structure of the event to tilt toward a single man. The floor manager finally found his voice. Sir, please, just tell us what you want. Marcus finally looked at him. It was a calm, cutting look like a scalpel deciding where to incise. What I want, Marcus said, is order. The room tensed. Order meant consequences. And consequences meant the night would not end the way any of them expected. He stepped forward once, and the crowd instinctively parted, creating a clean path through the ballroom. Not because he pushed them, not because he asked. Because the balance of power had inverted, silently, undeniably. And suddenly, every person in the room understood a terrifying truth. This man didn't need to raise his voice. He needed only to move. The ballroom parted around Marcus as if pulled by an unseen force. Not fear. Recognition slow, dawning, inevitable. The man in the dark suit walked beside him now, no longer cautious but aligned, his presence making something very clear. Marcus was not just someone important. He was someone above the chain of command entirely. Staff members began arriving from different wings of the venue: operations, logistics, hospitality, each stopping the moment their eyes landed on him. One by one, their expressions shifted from confusion to sharp, respectful awareness. It spread like a quiet wildfire. The waiter watched it all unfold with widening eyes. Oh my God, he whispered. He outranks everyone. The woman in red gasped as if the realization struck her physically. No, this can't be. Why would someone like him walk into a party like this dressed like... Marcus turned. Like someone you thought you could dismiss? He said. Her face crumpled. Every insult she'd thrown at him echoed back, cutting her instead. Across the room, the event coordinator, an older man with a silver beard, hurried toward them, breath short. He stopped just feet from Marcus, and for a moment the ballroom saw something they had not seen all night. Respect. Deep, practiced respect. Mr. Hale, the coordinator said, voice steady despite the tension. We received your signal. All internal access has been rerouted to your clearance level. Have a, sir. A collective inhale swept the room. The woman in white dropped her phone. It clattered loudly on the marble, echoing like a confession. "Mr. Hale," she whispered. "As in, Hale Dominion?" The man in the cream tux turned pale. "That can't be real. He wouldn't just show up here. He'd have security, or an entourage, or—" "He doesn't need an entourage," the coordinator replied quietly. "He built half the systems you're standing in." The floor seemed to tilt under their feet. Marcus looked around the room, wine still drying on his suit, power radiating from him like gravity. "Tonight," he said, "you made assumptions, loud ones. No yelling, no theatrics, just a truth delivered with surgical precision. And now," he continued, letting the silence tighten, "you get to live with what those assumptions revealed about you." The ballroom had no air left, only consequences. Marcus shifted his phone back to his ear. "Prepare the announcement," he said. "They're ready." The room wasn't ready at all. But readiness no longer mattered. The reveal had begun. A hush fell so deep it felt physical, as if the air had thickened into glass. Every guest, every server, every guard stood suspended between disbelief and dread, waiting for a confirmation they prayed would not come. Marcus lowered his phone, letting the silence stretch just long enough for the room to feel the weight of their mistake. The coordinator stood beside him, posture straightening with formal gravity. "It's time," Marcus said. The coordinator nodded and stepped forward. His voice carried through the ballroom like an official decree. "Ladies and gentlemen, please listen carefully." A pause. Even the chandelier seemed to stop shimmering. "You are standing in the presence of Marcus Hale, founder and chief executive of Hale Dominion Group." Gasps scattered through the room like glass shattering. The woman in red clutched the edge of the table, knuckles white. No, that's impossible," she whispered, shaking her head as if denial could rewrite what she'd heard. "If he was really, he wouldn't look like he wouldn't." But the coordinator continued, mercilessly factual. "Hale Dominion is the majority stakeholder in Aldridge Group and the primary architect of the acquisition negotiations. This event," he gestured to the glittering ballroom, "is being held in a venue Mr. Hale owns." A tremor moved through the crowd as realization detonated. The woman in white pressed both hands to her mouth. The man in the cream tux stumbled back until he collided with a chair. Even the floor manager went pale. He whispered, almost incoherent, We tried to escort out the owner." Marcus looked at them, calm, detached, unreadable. "You didn't try," he said quietly. "You insisted." The woman in red finally broke. I didn't know," she pleaded. "You can't blame us for not knowing who you were." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "That," he said, "is exactly the problem." His voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. Every person in the ballroom felt the sentence like a verdict. The man in the dark suit stepped forward. "Sir," he said, "Phase 3 is ready whenever you give the order." Phase 3. The phrase sucked the last remaining arrogance out of the room. The guards straightened. The guests stiffened. The woman in red froze completely, her breath shallow and desperate. Marcus inhaled, slow, controlled. "Not yet," he said. And somehow, that was even more terrifying. Because the room realized he wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The ballroom felt smaller now. Not physically, walls hadn't moved, but the space seemed to compress around the weight of Marcus's presence. People stood straighter, breathed, shallower, spoke less. Even the music faded into the background like it understood it no longer belonged. Marcus took one slow step forward. Just one. But it was enough for half the room to recoil, instinctively clearing a path they were no longer worthy to stand in. The woman in red clung to the table behind her, voice trembling like a cracked glass about to split. "Please, Mr. Hale, it was a misunderstanding. You have to believe me." "I don't," Marcus said simply. She flinched as though struck. The man in the cream tux tried to salvage whatever dignity remained. "Look, sir, we're sorry. Truly. But we didn't know." "That's what you keep saying," Marcus replied. His tone was calm, measured, lethal, as if ignorance is an excuse. "By their wealth." At his gesture, the man in the dark suit stepped forward, addressing the guards with quiet authority. "Execute Phase 3. The guards moved instantly, no hesitation now. One positioned himself beside the woman in red. Another blocked the man in the cream tux. Two more approached the floor manager, who backed into a service cart, knocking over a tower of glasses that shattered like a confession. "What does that mean?" the woman in red cried, voice breaking. "Where are you taking us?" The suited man answered with clinical clarity, "You are being escorted off Mr. Hale's property for misconduct toward the principal stakeholder." More gasps. No one argued. No one dared. The woman in white, shaking, lifted her phone as if to delete the video she had filmed. Before she could tap the screen, a soft chime came from her device, access denied. Marcus didn't even look at her. "Every recording taken tonight is already archived," he said. "And secured." The woman's knees buckled. The floor manager tried to step forward. "Sir, please, I've worked here for years." "And in all those years," Marcus said, "you chose to uphold the comfort of the powerful instead of the dignity of the vulnerable." The words carried the force of a verdict. "Escort him out," Marcus ordered. The guards complied. The ballroom watched in horrified silence as the very people who swaggered minutes ago were now guided toward the exit like trespassers because that was what they had made themselves. The waiter stood off to the side, chest rising and falling quickly, as if witnessing justice unfold was almost too much to process. Marcus turned to him at last. "You," he said quietly. The waiter stiffened. "You spoke when it mattered." A pause, gentle but heavy. "You'll stay." "Never ready." The waiter's eyes widened, throat tightening with emotion he didn't dare release. And then Marcus lifted his phone once more. "Prepare the final statement," he said. "They need to hear it." The ballroom was unrecognizable now. Where laughter once echoed, there was only the low hum of fear. Where arrogance once strutted, there was only the shuffle of escorted footsteps. And where Marcus Hale had been mocked, he now stood centered, an immovable axis the entire room revolved around. As the last of the offenders disappeared through the double doors, the guards closed them with a soft, definitive click. The sound was gentle, but everyone felt the finality of it. Marcus lowered his phone. "Put me on speaker," he said. The man in the dark suit tapped his device. A crisp voice filled the ballroom, echoing across marble and glass. "Statement, protocol online. Proceed when ready." Marcus scanned the faces before him. Executives, heirs, influencers, investors, people who had built their confidence on the assumption that power belonged only to them. They were wrong. "Tonight," Marcus began, his voice low but carrying effortlessly through the room, "you revealed not who I am, but who you are." No one moved. "You measured worth by clothing, by skin tone, by the absence of an entourage." Each sentence landed like a stone dropped into still water, quiet, heavy, irreversible. "And in doing so," he continued, "you exposed the very reason leadership fails." The coordinator bowed his head. The waiter stood straighter. Marcus went on. "I came here tonight unannounced, unarmored, unprotected. I wanted to see how you treat someone you believe holds no value to you." A few guests shifted, shame creeping into their posture. "What I found," Marcus said, "was a culture shaped not by excellence, but entitlement." Silence tightened. "But understand this." He paused, letting the tension ripen. "I'm not here to punish. I'm here to correct." A breath, steady, surgical. "Effective immediately, this venue and its management will undergo full restructuring. Behavioral conduct will be retrained. Leadership positions will be reevaluated. And every person who stood silent while others were humiliated." His gaze swept the room, a cold wind passing over exposed nerves. "We'll relearn what dignity means." The suited man nodded, already sending directives through his earpiece. Marcus turned toward the exit. Before stepping away, he delivered the line that froze the night into memory. "I didn't raise my voice tonight. I raised the standard." He walked out through the doors that opened for him alone, leaving behind a ballroom that would never forget the man they once mistook for nothing. The man who owned everything.